Now guys, this is going to be a Nick Shabazz-esque review of, as you guys saw, the Wingman EDC. Now, I'm gonna do a good, the bad, and ugly about this knife, and there's really only kind of a couple small things that are the ugly, but still, we're gonna get this out, we're gonna talk about it, we'll break it down. I was kind of excited when my buddy Nico told me that he was gonna let me borrow this to get it in for a tabletop review. Unfortunately, once I got it in hand, I'm pretty conflicted. I kind of like the idea of this knife, but in hand, the actual overall in hand is just not what I expected. So without any further ado, guys, watch your ears, because here comes the music. So already this morning I'm having production issues. I just filmed this and it, for some reason, did not record. So what I was saying is we're gonna do a Nick Shabazz type review on this. We're gonna talk about good, the bad, and the ugly while I've got it tipped down. We'll look at it top down so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. This is the Wingman EDC SPAR-K. So the SPAR-K or Spark. I'm calling it the Spark. And this is Nico's knife. He ordered this. And it is, it's a very small, cute little Nico-sized knife. I have some issues with this, especially when you get into what you're getting for what you're paying. So we'll talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the specs of the knife. We're going to do a basic down from the top down Nick Shabazz style, good, the bad, and the ugly, so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Because the idea of this knife was really cool, and I like it because I like the Lee Williams kickstop feature, which we'll look at when we get in there, but it's a really cool idea. I was excited that Nico was going to get it, and he said he was going to let me borrow it for the channel, but then I got it in hand, and I'm like, okay, I've got some serious issues now with this. So let's go ahead, and without any further ado, let's turn this around. I'll get the scale, and we'll get all this stuff out, and we'll look at specs, and we'll look at the knife up close. All right, guys, first things first, let's look at some specs. So what do we have here? We have got, this is the copper and titanium version. And it's attractive, don't get me wrong, it's an attractive little knife. But like I said, it's got some issues. Let me get this window closed so maybe we won't hear the sirens as badly. It's probably coming close to my house. So this is a titanium frame lock knife. Like I said, it uses the, first thing, let's look at that's Lee Williams. I love the Lee Williams kickstop. It's a really cool feature that they've put on knives because a lot of people don't like that flipper tab sticking out here. I personally like it on a lot of knives, but to have that option of that flipper tab completely disappears. So it's a separate piece that is attached, and when you close it, it kicks back out, and that's what puts the pressure on the blade to actually actuate the flipper. So let's take a quick look at it. So what you have here is overall length of 6 inches. It's a 6-inch knife. Blade length of 2.65 with a cutting edge of 2.5 inches. As you can see, it's a hollow ground Tonto, and it's ground fairly well in M390 steel. It runs on ceramic bearings, right? So let's look at the good things about this. It is a small, nice little knife. It's actually machined fairly well. There's not much. We'll talk about this pivot here in a minute. And the action on it's not bad. As far as the action, milled pocket clip with proprietary pivot. Now, inside the box, you get all the stuff you need to take the knife apart. You get all the info, all that crap. You get a cool little dog tag that shows serial number, the designer, the knives, the model, the steel type, all that stuff is on this. And then on the back, they have a pretty cool little set of logos on the back that you can see. Now that's actually pretty cool. it comes with a proprietary pivot tool, and apparently it's meant for people with very little hands because I can't get that tool out very well. So it has a really cool looking proprietary pivot tool. Do you really need the proprietary pivot tool? No, you could probably make your own, but this is again one of those ones that if you wanted to get a good bit of torque on this, you'd have a hard time with it. I would prefer that they made something like this with a socket, you put it in a driver bit. Use it as a driver bit. I do not like these little standalone keychain style pivot tools because they never give you enough purchase. I mean, those are tiny. Those are tiny little lips. But they do provide you with all that stuff, and it's kind of cool. It's pretty cool. It's not, you know, it's kind of gimmicky, but it's really pretty cool. And the packaging is done well. Magnetic clasp and things like that. If you're into packaging, I kind of think it's a waste of materials, but you know, hey, that's just me. So let's go ahead and we'll get some weight on it now that we've gotten some of the specs out of the way. It does run on ceramic bearings. We covered all that stuff. So let's get some weight. So I'm sorry if I'm talking loud, guys. I know that I'm closer to the microphone now. And this microphone on this phone is so much better than the old one. You're looking at 2 3/8 ounces. And if you're looking at it in grams, that's only 67 grams. So let's go get a banana for comparison. So we've got my Shabazz for scale. And you can see it's a tiny little guy. And in comparison, the other small size knife that I carry on a regular basis is my Ferrum Forge Gent. And it is still smaller than the Gent. And the Gent's not a real big knife. I do love this little knife though. So let's go ahead and clean some of the stuff out of the way. And we will, through the magic of editing, right about now. There we go. Everything's taken care of. So let's look at this. So now I've told you the specs on the knife. And the good things about this knife is the edge grind is done fairly well. It's a nice hollow. It's not too thick behind the edge, even though it is kind of a wider blade or a thinner blade with a fairly thick blade stock. When I talk about thinness of or width of the blade, so that you guys that are new to the channel know, the wider the blade, the thinner you have to get behind the edge because you're deeper transition. But done in a hollow like this, you can kind of overcome that a little more easily. A lot of good blade to handle ratio. Cutting edge to blade length is really good. Like I said, 2.5 inches of cutting edge, and it is a 2.65 inch blade. So your blade length, your available cutting edge of blade length is done. It's very well. Milling on this is pretty good. Pocket clip is not an ugly pocket clip. I'm not a fan of any pocket clips, to tell you the truth, but this one's not horrible. But for me, it's kind of a bad. We'll talk about that in a second. Like I said, the hardware is well done. Blade is well done. Not too many markings on the blade, and the ones that are on there are done well. And yeah, it's an attractive little package. So that's the good. Let's go ahead and get into the bad. The bad. There's some things about this that I don't personally like. And so the bad for these, I would not throw into the ugly because it's a personal preference. This knife should have been a gentleman's carry without a pocket clip. For a guy with normal sized hands, average sized guy with that, even an average sized person, that knife is going to stick right here in your hand, and that pocket clip is pretty tall. This would have been better suited to just have not had a pocket clip, or had a much thinner profile pocket clip, because already for a small knife, it's fairly thick behind the back. The clamshell design, I'm not a fan of that, because I would prefer that they had completely had a backspacer that was separate and maybe floated it or used standoffs. And you can see the reason I don't like it, there's some gaps in there. There's some gaps in there that are just obvious. At least they did it down the center, as opposed to like having one scale, have it, and then it's screwed in and things like that. I like the single point screw, but once again, like I've said before, I'm a fan of symmetry in things. And so only having a screw on one side seems asymmetrical. It's a personal preference. For me, it's a bad thing. I don't like asymmetry. I would prefer that they had done this as a socketed barrel and had a screw on each side so that it looked the same from side to side. The other bad, I wish that this had a steel insert. I do like some knives that are titanium, all titanium, but if you can put a steel insert in, I would prefer that you did, because over the life of the knife, you're going to have less problems with lock stick and things like that. And then this. I wish that the copper, if they had found a way to maybe just mill it down so it was closer to here, because it just, for me, it doesn't, I don't know. I just don't find that pleasing aesthetically. It's nothing to do with the function of the knife, but you can see there's some little gaps. That's uneven compared to this side. You got a high spot here that I can just kind of barely feel. And am I being nitpicky? Yes, but I'll tell you why when we get to the ugly. So now that's the bad things that I see. Now the ugly. Let's see if I can get this close enough to the microphone. There is a very gritty action to this. It feels like it's just still rough, coarse ground. You can see that satin is fairly aggressive. I'm able to file my fingers on it. I think that follows back into here. This knife should have had a bit of a finer finish on the marrying surfaces, on the moving surfaces. It's gritty. It really is. Now that clicking sound you hear, that's going to come with the kickstop. That's just natural. That pivot standing up is not only ugly because it feels bad in hand, it's ugly just because it's ugly. If you're gonna completely contour your handles, you need to find a way, in my opinion, to not have that stand up a full millimeter. Right? Full millimeter up above that transition. It's sharp. It's not great. And then you guys know me on knife grinds. Way off. That is way off. That's like a millimeter off. Now, is the cutting edge like that? No, the cutting edge is actually ground fairly well. It does have a thick widening here that you guys know. I hate when that heel thickens up here, because what's going to happen is as you're sharpening, it's going to ramp. So that choil should have been brought out a little bit further. That's not an ugly. That should have been thrown in with the bad, but it slipped my mind. Now, the last of the ugly is something I'm going to be, and to tell you the truth, in my opinion, the way that pocket clip feels in my hand is ugly. But that right there, come on guys. Come on guys. Now, the last point, you can see that thickening wide spot right at the heel of that knife, right where the plunge is, where that sharpening choil could have been brought back about that far, maybe about a millimeter or so. Let's flip this up so I can talk to you face to face about what I think is the ugly, the worst of the ugly on this. So hang on just a second. What's the last ugly, the big ugly on this knife? Guys, the standard model, the standard straight titanium model was $350. But this isn't the standard model. This is an upgraded. These were $395. Guys, in comparison, my Reat Horizon D was just over $400, and it's amazingly well done, and there are none of these flaws. There are so many knives out there that at that price point, like at $350, and this is me, like people are, you're so critical. At $350, I should not be having an issue with anything on this, and especially that gritty action. Like, that's horrendous. It is not a smooth action on this. It is gritty from start to finish the entire way. Now, we've oiled this and things like that. Misgrind on the swedge at $350, unacceptable. So the big ugly for this one, the price. I cannot get past that price. What am I getting for what am I paying for? It's just, it's not for me. And the fact that it's such a small knife. Now, those things being taken aside, if this knife was something that, like, it was a gift, I would not look a gift horse in the mouth. This would be a great gift if I had received it as a gift. I wouldn't be so inclined to punch holes in it, but it's not my knife. Somebody else's knife, and I can look at it objectively, because a lot of times, I don't know if you guys know this, when you buy knives, you're blinded by the newness of it. And then after you've had it a little bit, you're like, man, did the action feel like that when I first got it? Maybe, maybe not. But the big things are like the little nitpicky things that I point out and things like that. A lot of times people get upset because I'm pointing out flaws in a knife that you can't unsee. Because the honeymoon phase, when you first buy a knife, you're like, oh, wow, that's great. And then you start to notice these things. When somebody points them out to you while you're in the honeymoon phase, sometimes it's irritating. And that's why people get upset. But yeah, there's just things I can't overlook in this. So I'm going to say that the Wingman EDC is not, the Wingman EDC Spark or SPAR-K is not a knife for me. The price point's too high. There's too many things. That pivot is uncomfortable. It really is uncomfortable in hand. And sometimes it is really super stiff to flip. And then other times it's not. And I think that's because there's lateral play, this direction and that direction with that flipper tab, because it's not connected directly to the blade. So it's like it gets out of position. And especially if you like play with it and wiggle it in between, yep, it was so much harder to flip if you mess with it. Once you flip it and then bring it back, super easy. I'm not a fan of how they executed the Lee Williams kickstop. So, you know, back to everything I always say. It's a matter of my opinion. If you don't like my opinion, then, you know, try the knife out yourself. I would definitely recommend on something like this where I'm finding that many issues with the knife, that if you want to try one, I would see if you can find somebody that has one, see if you can get it in hand. Take a look at it first before you purchase one. It's so much better. I've said this about custom knives. A lot of times people get a custom knife in and then they're just so disappointed because you're like, what did I pay for? Why did I pay this much for this? Because you got it sight unseen. So that's why I do these videos. I try to just point out the things that I notice about knives that maybe will prevent you from getting burned or being upset with your purchase. And then you're stuck with it because a lot of times, especially right now, the way things are financially, a lot of people aren't buying knives. I still got a mixed rider custom in there. I've been able to sell for over a year. So yeah, guys, that's it on this one. I have a couple other videos that I'm going to do stuff on. There's videos that are coming out. I'm not sure how soon this video is going to come out. I'm usually about 2 weeks in advance. So right now I'm 2 weeks ahead of when you're going to see it. So the paying customers are going to see it today. Everybody else will see it in like 2 weeks. That's about the average. So there'll be stuff in the corners. I'm not sure what channel I'm going to put up. If you guys want links to the exclusive content and exclusive giveaways, there is a link. I'm sorry, if you want access to them, there's a link in the description where you can just click on it and join. There's different tiers. Make your choice of what tier. I had somebody say that they wanted to join, and they did join, and then they were like, but I don't have access to this. I was like, well, you have to look at the tiers of who has access to what. There are some things that only the top tier members have access to. So without any further ado and not trying to jazz it up and sell my membership stuff, I will see you guys later. And remember, if we can get my memberships to $500 a month, I will carry this we'll figure out a crazy time period for me to carry Big Blue. Hunt down. So, all right, guys, I love you all. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.